Welcome back after the summer break to the Alphabet of Healing. I'm Julia, a German missionary from the Working Day, and I'm living here in the Bay Area in San Francisco. And I wanted to deepen with you today the letter L for liability, because some years ago I woke up with a question: when exactly did I become a liability? Sometimes it's a small thing, and instead of being a resource, we are becoming a liability. It could be an illness or changing circumstances. As long as Roman Catholic sisters worked for free in parishes and parish schools, they were very much liked to be employed, if you can say it's an employment without salary. When they began to need salaries with pension plans, they turned to liabilities, and parishes preferred to rent the convent to businesses than to keep sisters on their grounds. Or in the Old Testament, when Abraham and Sarah had a child, Isaac, the first child, Ishmael, with his mother Hagar, suddenly became a liability to the family. Now, dictators are especially known for claiming quickly that a human resource has become a liability for them and need to be eliminated or discredited. To think of my German past, a little-known reality is that probably around 80,000 people who were part in small, splintered resistance groups around them in Germany were executed with the reason of high treason to the Aryan state during the Hitler period. May one say even that after slavery was finally abolished in the United States of America, people of African descent, who had been the greatest resource of the US as forced laborers, now had become a liability? Once it was not possible to simply continue the genocide and eliminate whole Native American tribes, were they suddenly becoming a liability to a newfound nation that wanted to understand itself as made up by other immigrant ethnicities? To become a liability is an interpretation of the turn of events in a society and in one's own personal life. And it is an interpretation that, in my opinion, is of crucial importance to our personal and social journey of healing. If a grandmother looks after the children and also cooks, she's a resource, but when she's becoming physically diminished, she will be soon a liability. What then? Perhaps we have been in this situation through illness or age, or as a veteran, or as a cancer survivor, or an elderly person. For years, perhaps, we were an asset for the military or other communities, and for their own family, and now we are seen as a liability. Who is paying for him or her? Who cares for him or her? And can we keep them out of our backyard? Very often convinced that they are not discriminating against anybody with disability, people would just tell me. However, I don't feel comfortable to be around people who are missing a limb or a chronic illness. Or perhaps I don't want that my children think this is a normal life. So what makes us a liability? We are different than others, and the community has to pitch in to pull us through. Whoever invented the phrases for marriage, in good times and bad times, until the death separates us, had an idea of how quick another person can be felt as a liability. And very similarly, a religious community who commits to the individual in health and sickness at their perpetual profession. There's also the liability that a whistleblower becomes to a company, or a person speaking out their conscience at a peaceful manifestation. As long as they play by the rule books that others set up, it's okay. But once they can't be used anymore for political purposes, the whistleblower often lives a broken career and is alone, and the manifesting person finds him or herself in prison. We labored and supported the government and or other parts of the society. We exercise our right to think and to speak, but it became politically non-beneficial, and so the whistleblower disappears, and the manifestation is quickly marked as a riot. So what makes us a liability? We are not anymore of use to the people who would like to use us politically or economically, even in our very protest. We need to be silenced or at least prohibited to exercise influence. And then there is another kind of liability that whole sections of society are branded with accordingly. Japanese Americans suddenly had to be put in internment camps because of Pearl Harbor. French people slumped from heroes of 1789 to enemies of the year 2002 because they didn't support the US in a war. Or one might think of the systemic and century-long transmission that African Americans and Native Americans are a liability to the US society. Really? Oh yes, because they are violent, have alcohol, drug and gang issues, and need to be controlled. So what makes us a liability? Even abused, oppressed and violated by the very ones who took everything from us that was of value, they still judge us as a liability. The resources of the lands of Native American tribes that have been confiscated, and the resources of the plantations that were built with the blood and bones of African American, put together for the United States of America, probably more wealth than any other ethnic group. That is the reason why it is so important on a journey of personal and social healing to think about feeling oneself or feeling others as a liability. So why do I feel myself as a liability? The chances are that my being different is an enhancement and enrichment for the human community beyond any possible numeric value. Isn't it one of the most important human experiences to be shared with younger generations, what it means to a people, to a nation, to children and families to be in war? Who is going to share it, if not the veterans? Aren't the ones who do not fit into the artificial perfection of what it means to be human, the ones who really teach us about our humanity, fragility and possibility as a human community? An elder person, a disabled person. Who is going to keep our memory alive, if not the ones who are old? And then when they teach us to be their memory, they teach us to continue the tradition. Perhaps sometimes it helps to remember Jesus managed to become a social liability in less than 3 years of his life. That seems actually quite encouraging. Now, beyond our own experience, perhaps, of feeling like a liability, the probably more dangerous issue is feeling others as a liability. One should be probably very suspicious what is behind such judgment, and how it came about in oneself as an individual or in the society as a whole. Who wants this or that person or this or that group understood as a liability? Whose interest is behind it? History teaches us how quick tides shift and judgment remains for centuries. I personally don't think that there will ever be real social healing possible until we don't break through the judgment upon certain groups that they are liabilities to the society. Not only does the wealth of the United States of America belong to all, but I think it is worthwhile to at least ask the question if it does not belong especially to the ones who it was stolen from or who gave their corporal lives for. It seems to me that on the journey of healing and justice, we need to break through the interpretations that are created when context shifts, and we need to ask those questions that might have very long answers. you.